Hi, my name's Jimmy, aka Cueboyd, and this is a quick tour around my studio. So we start off with the main part, which is the actual computer. It's actually an iMac from 2014. I've had it for quite some time. It's really old, but it's quite fast. It does what I need it to do. It's got like 16 gigs of RAM, which is okay for time being. So it's fairly fast until Apple Silicon sort of like transitions within the next 2 years or so. So on the Mac, I actually sequence on Cubase. I've been a long time user of Cubase. I just find the workflow is just really easy. I mean, when I use Live, I use Ableton Live because I find having two DAWs are just a bit more flexibility. But Cubase, I feel like I'm the only person producing on Cubase, but there's a few others, but nobody talks about it. It's our little secret that we keep to ourselves. So next up is the monitors. They are Dynaudio BM12As. I bought them. They were pretty expensive, but they do a fantastic job. They're not fatiguing on the ear. They're very sort of smooth, but also they're quite detailed as well. So that's the best of like both worlds. So next over here is my interface. It's a Motu 828 Mark III. I've had this for a long time as well. It does an okay job. It sounds pretty good. It's quite flexible. It's got multiple routing, which is like really interesting, because I do use an analog sort of like mix bus when I'm doing like the mix downs. So just above that is the mastering sort of like with a mixing chain. So for my mix bus, which is completely sort of analog. I like to do a combination of like analog and digital, because analog and digital are not better than each other. They're just different mediums to use, and you get different, like the tactile feel of like the analog was, with digital is a bit more functional, but you know, analog, it's got some real dirt to it. So above there is the SPL Vitalizer. Now I use this as a programmed sort of like EQ, so like basically on the mix bus it's like the master sort of like EQ, but it's not really designed for that. It's actually like a mastering processor, so you can also do other things on it, like widen the stereo field, compress the low EQ, separate from the high, and also you can add it's a very sort of strange piece of equipment, but it does sound, you put stuff through it, it sounds nicer. On top of that, I have an Alesis 3632? Yes, I completely forgot the name of it. I just use that as a mix bus compressor. It's probably not the best one to use, but it does a job. You know, I kind of like, it has a bit of character to it, which, I guess if you like doing mastering, it's something you don't need, but it gives makes everything sound a bit more analog. It was cheap and it works well. So over to the other side, I've got a Behringer mixer. I just use that to put inputs in, and that's about it really. It doesn't really do much. And below that is a Focusrite Octoprix preamp. I kind of bought this because I was like making like a commercial studio, but it didn't actually get off the ground, so I was too scared to start it. But I use this as like a preamp for like anything, just like my other like synths and stuff, and also I use it as a word clock. So with the Motu units, I have like a word clock. This does all like the clocking for most of the studio, which is not the use it should be used for, but that's what I use it for anyway. Okay, next to the more interesting parts, the synthesizers. So here I've got the Moog or the Moog, depending which part of the world you are, Subfatti. Basically, it's the Jesus Christ, it's like the most fastest sounding thing on earth. You put stuff through it, it literally, for bass sounds, it just like shakes. It's just absurd. And also, if you put the multi-dry filter onto it, it will literally rip your head off, because it's like such a strong filter. So it's great. Other synths I have, Axis Virus TI. I bought this a while ago, and it's an interesting synth. I'll say it's like one of my two poly synths I have. You can make really good, nice. I really love it for like arpeggiated stuff, and sort of like bass sounds. Anything that sounds quite aggressive, it sounds fantastic. Onto the other side, we have the Nautilus 2X. This is like my main sort of poly, sort of like, I know, even though it's not an analog, it's a virtual analog synth. But it's like my poly synth. It's really good for like pads, and also making really like analog sort of sounds. I really like it. It's got a really quite unique sound. It's very in your face. If that's your sort of thing, it's worth considering. Below that is a Core Kronos. I don't really use the inbuilt sounds very often, but it's because I used to use it as a sort of like band keyboard for like playing like piano and Rhodes sort of stuff. But that's kind of like my MIDI controller. It's like the most overkill MIDI controller probably ever, but that's just what I use for it. I mean, some of the sounds on it are good. I still like using like the Rhodes and like some of the piano sounds. It's as well as that, I have some other pieces of kit, such as the TC Electronic BMC2. This is kind of like my monitor controller, but also it acts like a DAC. It actually came free with like the monitors, which is crazy because it's like when it was brand new, it was like 400 quid. But yeah, no, it's good. It's nice to have good like control over like the volume. I know that sounds a really simple thing for it, but it does, and also a separate headphone amp as well. So my headphones are the HD25s, another random item I've had for ages. I've kind of like put different colours on them and stuff, but no, they're good. I used to have like Bare Dynamic 770s, which were good, but the sort of the cable was broken. It was quite tricky to fix, so I thought, well, I'll just use the Sennheisers for time being, and that's probably been over a year or so. So I'm in no rush to like replace them, which is good. A new item is the Behringer X-Touch 1, I think it's called. Yep, it's kind of like a door controller. Yeah, quite interesting. I've always liked the idea of having one, but I've never really thought I'd have a use for it. But I just bought it, and it's good for like the workflow. If you sort of like changing different, like if you want to do shortcuts, it's just a lot more easier rather than doing a lot of mouse clicking and keyboard shortcuts. This mic, it's I've had this for years. I used to use it for like recording my bands years ago. It's a Blue Spock. It's quite a basic condenser mic. Does the job. I mean, I don't use it very often other than just like doing Zoom calls and stuff like that. But no, it's a great piece of kit. Quite affordable as well. It's kind of hilarious because it's called a Blue Spark. Yeah, it is red, which is great marketing, Blue. But it's good basic mic. So I also have a Yamaha AG06. This is a really useful piece of kit. I use it for particularly if you've got like other processing. It actually works better for like Zoom and like Discord, because for some reason the motor is just a pain in the ass to like root, but this thing is just so much more flexible, and you could do loopback functions, which is really interesting as well. So on the Mac as well, I have a variety of different plugins, but I will say most people, which drives my friends crazy, is my favourite plugin is probably Serum. I've created sounds on Serum that I've always wanted to make, and it's just it's an absolute beast. It's just like the most brutal bass synth. In fact, majority of all my sounds are just like, regardless if it's like drum and bass, dubstep, or any other like genres I produce, like house and stuff. 9 times out of 10, the bass sounds come out of Serum because it's just so versatile. It's amazing. I use other ones as well, like Vital as well. Vital is kind of interesting. A lot of people say it's like the improved version of Serum, which I don't think it is really. It's I think it's an interesting alternative. Like I think it works well with Serum, not trying to compete with it. I find with like Vital has a more sort of like weirder, squidgier, spectral sort of sound, so it's a bit more experimental, whilst like Serum is a bit more digital sounding, whereas Vital is a bit more flexible, but I still prefer the sound of Serum. So Serum is life. Also, if you've probably seen in my older videos, I do have some other pieces of kit. I do have a Yamaha Reface CS, Roland TB8 for like acid sort of stuff, and an Electron, that's just such a fun piece of equipment for making like drums on the fly and stuff like that. And for camera wise, over here I do have a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 4K edition. This thing's amazing. I mean, I've been using sort of like Blackmagic for about 5 years or so, but I decided to invest one for myself, and it's pretty glad because it's amazing. The quality is so good. And I also use DaVinci Resolve for editing, so it's with that comes free with the camera as well. So it's a great package, and I think it's probably worth the money. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. That's my tour of N Studio. I mean, there's probably a ton of other stuff I've literally not talked about, but that is what I've got to say. Leave a comment if you want to know any more information. Hit like and subscribe if you want to listen to more music.